If you want to take a minute and set your motivation. Reconnecting with altruism, reconnecting with meaning and purpose, our reason for study, our reason for practice, our reason for life. Taya Taya Om Mune Mune Maha Munaya Soha Taya Taya Om Mune Mune Maha Munaya Soha Taya Taya Om Mune Mune Maha Munaya Soha. Reconnecting, refreshing, reviving. So today I think we're going to finish our main semester text, and then for the last few sessions we'll be looking at the book from Lama Yeshe that we've just sort of brushed over a little bit, but mostly we'll be talking about how to then meditate on these ideas that we've been talking about all semester. So your semester text, I might refer to things in it, but today is probably going to be the last day that we'll need it. Before we jump in, did you have any hanging thoughts or ideas from our story time, our Sakadawa story time about the Buddha's 32 marks and 80 minor signs and the causes for those? Any kind of stuff that bubbled up as you've had time to let it sit? What did you think? Just the list was on pages 26 and 27, just a list of them if you're trying to refresh your memory. Any thoughts about those?
Well, it's not specifically regarding these marks, but I did think that about the connection between body and mind, and how useful it would have been if we had the other way around guide, you know, for patients with all kinds of illnesses that I meet now, and if I had this kind of guide to know what is the cause there, and just the fact of everything being so interconnected, and that everything affects everything, so nothing is outside this sphere.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It would be it would be interesting. It's so interesting the way that we use our body, the way that we use our face to communicate. Do you remember? I don't know if you remember in the Olympics, maybe like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, there were these two women who were like the top figure skaters, and they were both ethnically Japanese, but one of them was Japanese, and one of them was American. Christy Yamaguchi, I thought she was amazing. And when they were at neutral, you know, before the interviewer would say anything to them, they looked like they were both from Japan. But the second Christy Yamaguchi started to speak, you knew she was American, right? Never mind the accent, never mind the word choices, just the way she used her face. You were like, that is an American right there. Even the way she would use her hands. And I thought it was so interesting because I was very young at the time, and I remember thinking, oh, right, there's your face, but then there's how you use your face. And it's communicating a whole series of things that are so much more than the words. So much more than the words. So yeah, I wish there was a chart for how come your eye's doing that weird thing? How come this, what is that trying to communicate? What suffering is that trying to communicate? And but you know how it is when you're really in sync with someone that words become almost incidental, There's been times when I remember when I was first here and I was just getting to know you guys, someone, I think it was Iris, said something to me like, do you mind if the air conditioning is on or something? And she forgot and she said it in Hebrew instead of saying it in English. And I knew what she meant, even though I don't speak more than like 5 words of Hebrew. It was just obvious. She was trying to convey air conditioning logistics, And yeah, so I wish there was a whole other chart, but it's interesting to know what will sort of radiate through us once we're fully enlightened. Other thoughts about the marks and signs? Some of them are sort of sweet and magical, and some of them are sort of weird and perplexing.
First of all, I remember myself thinking about the ears. Because the Buddha always have these long ears, right?
Yeah.
And I don't remember us talking about it, and I always thought about it.
So, yeah, maybe it's not on that list. It's on a whole other list. I used to remember, because I remembered always going, why the long ears? Oh, it'll come to me. I'll send it to you in an email. It's in there somewhere. I'll remember randomly at 3 a.m. or something. But yeah, there's a reason for the long ears.
And the second thing, I just thought that there's something like when I look at the Dalai Lama, it always makes me so connected and it's so tangible. And thinking about all these, about the Buddha, it seems very far and it gets me off the track than on the track. So because then it seems it seems magical and unreal, and so it's weird. Looking at the Dalai Lama always makes me feel, okay, now I know why I'm here.
Yeah, exactly.
It's too far away for me.
Yeah, it's a delicate dance, because if we make it too ordinary, then we miss out on the fact that something more is happening here than what happens in normal development, in normal mental health. But then if we make it too magic, it feels kind of unrelatable and unconnected, and how could we possibly achieve such a thing? So it kind of is this delicate dance we need to do internally of, on one level, His Holiness is just a simple monk, just as he says. He is just a Tibetan man in his 80s who has this life story and this history, and all of that is true and inspiring and relatable. And he is also thousand-armed Chenrezig, glowing pearl white in color, 1,000 arms, 1,000 eyes, looking in all directions. And those things can be true simultaneously. But it's like, if you only think of the glorified, magical, divine aspect, who can you talk to about your bad day? And if you think only the sweet monk who's ordinary, then how is he really any different to you, except for he's had a few different cultural aspects or a few different life challenges. So it's like we're wanting to touch the fact that enlightenment is an ordinary human experience that we have already begun the process of. But the end point is something far more vast and far more profound than we could ever imagine. It's something more than a very friendly person who has integrated themselves. You know, it's different than just a very contented, happy person who lives lightly on the earth and isn't too much of a consumer. It's more and deeper than that. So it's like, keep it relatable, but don't make it so relatable that you leave it as ordinary. You know, it's delicate, right? Because, you know, to think of the magic side of things can either pull you towards some sort of profundity, or it can be off-putting and make you think it's not achievable, or it's a silly fairy story or some folk tales, you know, taught to children to make them feel better about the inevitability of death or something, you know. So I think we really have to touch within us, is there a potential for magic in the world? And is it possible that magic is actually something that is within the capacity of every single sentient being? It's just a skill set, like learning to read. You know, it's just a potentiality in all of us that can be trained and developed into. It's not something gifted to special people and only special people get it. It's not something that is just told to make us happy and behave well. It's actually, you know, tools and techniques anyone can develop. So it's both more profound and less profound than perhaps we initially thought. Yeah. More profound, but more accessible, you know. Yeah, it's quite interesting. It's interesting.
It just reminds me of a session I had with my daughter last night.
Oh,
she
yeah?
was afraid of zombies. Yeah, she was afraid of zombies. And she said, I'm so afraid. And I told her, honey, I've been living on this earth. There are no. So she was skeptical and she said, well, I don't know if I can trust that. But, you know, if you don't see nobody that looks like that, is it something that exists? Well, if we don't see nobody and nobody says, well, I've seen it, I've been there, or something like that, why should you think that this magic can be real?
Yeah, I mean, just because you haven't seen something, does that prove its lack of existence? Certainly not. I mean, there's lots of things that we believe in that we've never seen. I believe that there is an Amazon rainforest and that we should save it. I have never been to the Amazon, right? I believe that there are amazing African elephants and that they're gradually going extinct. I believe that they exist, but I've never been to Africa, you know? I believe it, though. So it's interesting that what do we decide to believe? What is our criteria for belief? And from a Buddhist perspective, you take what you can touch, what you can experience, what is logical as the basis for inferring that more of the same is possible. So you're not starting from nowhere. You're not starting from impossible suddenly becoming possible. You're saying this smaller version, I understand, I can reach, I've experienced. Why would that have an end point? You know, so it's not just kind of a random, you know, vacuous blind faith of hope, you know, and fantasy. It's taking your real life visceral experience of, is change possible? You know, is development possible? And of course, once you try, you know, it is really slow and that your mind goes much faster than your ability to integrate and change behaviorally. And yet there are behavioral changes that you have initiated. There has been self-directed evolution in your life so far. Self-directed evolution, yeah. Because, you know, if you just kind of got wiser with age, all old people would be wise. And have you met some that aren't? You know, we could become stuck in our ways, or we could continually progress and continually learn. It's a choice, but it's a dependently arisen choice that needs a lot of support and a lot of influences. So, you know, marks and signs is kind of a, okay, take it or leave it. Interesting information, but it's going to come up in this next section. So I wanted to make sure I touched it at some point, just so you knew what the list was referring to. Okay, so what we're going to do is finish this section, and then we're going to do a little online exercise that I haven't tried before, so we'll see how it goes. It could be quite fun. It could be technical chaos, but anyway, I'm trying new things. So if you want to start halfway down page 67, we'll just finish this section, starting with, are we already Buddhas? So some of this material we've already covered, and some of it is adding a bit of nuance and detail. So, are we already Buddhas? In the Tathagata Garbha Sutra, right, the Buddha Potential Sutra, the Buddha explained that each sentient being possesses a permanent, stable, and enduring Tathagata Garbha, Buddha nature, that is a fully developed Buddha body, replete with the 32 signs of a Buddha. Questions arise. If an already realized Buddha existed within us, wouldn't we be ignorant Buddhas? If we were actual Buddhas now, what would be the purpose of practicing the path? If we were already Buddhas and yet still needed to purify defilements, wouldn't a Buddha have defilements? If we had a permanent, stable, and enduring essence, wouldn't that contradict the teachings on selflessness and instead resemble the soul or self asserted by non-Buddhists? So the Buddha does say explicitly in a sutra, his own words, there is a permanent, stable, enduring Tathagata Garbha. And then we interpret it in a million different ways. So one of the ways that it would be natural to interpret it is to think, oh, well, that's the soul then. That's the spirit then. That's what every other religion says then. Oh, easy, okay. But wait, then why do Buddhists hammer on about emptiness? You know, so that's where we're going here. So Mahamati expressed these same doubts to the Buddha in the Descent into Lanka Sutra. The Tathagata Garbha taught by the Buddha in some sutras is said to be clear light in nature, completely pure from the beginning, and to exist possessing the 32 signs in the bodies of all sentient beings. If, like a precious gem wrapped in dirty cloth, the Buddha expressed that the Tathagata Garbha, wrapped in and dirtied by the cloth of the aggregates, constituents, and sources, overwhelmed by the force of attachment, animosity, and ignorance, dirty with the defilements of conceptualizations, and permanent, stable, and enduring, how is this propounded as Tathagata Garbha different from the non-Buddhists propounding a self? Right? How is it different than what everyone else says? Some Tibetan scholars accept the teaching on a permanent, stable, and enduring Buddha nature literally, saying that it is a definitive teaching. Over the page, sharing the doubts expressed above by Mahamati in that sutra. Prasangikas, who is the subtlest tenet school, the consequentialists, say that this is an interpretable teaching. They say this not on a whim, but by examining 3 points. So do you remember that when we did the 4 reliances at the very beginning, when you first came into human spirit, that you rely not on the teacher, but the teachings, not on the words, but the meaning, not just on the interpretable, but the definitive, and not just on the definitive, but by experience. It's that reference, yeah. Okay, so number 1, what was the Buddha's final intended meaning when he made this statement? When speaking of a permanent, stable, and enduring essence in each sentient being, the Buddha's intended meaning was the emptiness of the mind, the naturally abiding Buddha nature, which is permanent, stable, and enduring. Because the mind is empty of inherent existence and the defilements are adventitious, meaning extra, Buddhahood is possible. 2, what was the Buddha's purpose for teaching this? The Buddha taught permanent, stable, enduring essence, complete with the 32 signs, in order to calm such people's fear of selflessness, and to gradually lead non-Buddhists to the full realization of suchness, meaning emptiness in this context. At present, these people who are spiritually immature feel comfortable with the idea of a permanent essence. The idea of the emptiness of inherent existence frightens them. They mistakenly think that it means there is nothing whatsoever exists. They fear that by realizing emptiness, they will disappear and cease to exist. To calm this fear, the Buddha spoke in a way that corresponds with their current ideas. Later, when they are more receptive, he will teach them the actual meaning. This is similar to the way skillful parents simplify complex ideas to make them comprehensible to young children. Right? Makes sense? So it's like, here is the story, but it's not the whole story, but it's the amount of the story that most people can cope with. So let's start there and get comfortable with working and practicing at that level. And then when you kind of come to some connection with it and start to open up, then I'll give you more of the story. Yeah. So I think that I'm sure all of you can relate when you're trying to explain something complicated to kids, the way in which you simplify it. It's still the truth, but it's not the whole giant story, because that would overwhelm them and it's too soon, right? So then 3, what logical inconsistencies arise from taking this statement literally? Accepting this teaching on a permanent, stable, and enduring Buddha nature at face value contradicts the definitive meaning of emptiness and selflessness taught by the Buddha in the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, like the Heart Sutra that we're studying in Cohort 1. In those sutras, the Buddha set forth many reasonings that refute this view. Furthermore, if this statement were accepted literally, the Buddha's teachings would be no different than those of non-Buddhists who assert a permanent self. The emptiness of inherent existence, which is the ultimate reality and natural purity of the mind, exists in all sentient beings without distinction. Based on this, it is said that a Buddha is present. But the ultimate reality of a Buddha does not exist in sentient beings. While Buddhas and sentient beings are the same in that the ultimate nature of their minds is emptiness, that ultimate reality is not the same, because one is the ultimate reality of a Buddha's mind, that nature Dharmakaya, and the other is the ultimate reality of a defiled mind. So the emptiness is the same, but the basis is different. If we say that the nature Dharmakaya existed in sentient beings, we would have to also say that the wisdom Dharmakaya, which is one nature with it, existed in sentient beings. Right? So we talk in general that jhana Dharmakaya, the nature Dharmakaya, the permanent aspect, the other 3 bodies being impermanent or related to the changeable nature of the mind, that is our like naturally abiding purity. But you can't call it a full jhana Dharmakaya until you have all the other kayas. That would mean that sentient beings were omniscient, which is certainly not the case. Similarly, if the abandonment of all defilements existed in ordinary beings, there would be nothing to prevent them from directly perceiving the natural purity of their minds. They would directly realize emptiness. This too is not the case. Some people say the Dharmakaya with the 2 purities, the natural purity and the purity of abandonment of all defilements, which is called the adventitious purity, exists in the mind streams of sentient beings, but because sentient beings are obscured, they don't perceive it. If that were the case, then whose mind is purified and who attains the freedom that is the purity of all defilements? If sentient beings already possess the Dharmakaya, there is no need for them to practice the path and purify their minds, because from beginningless time, their minds have been free of adventitious defilements. Over the page, the assertion that a Buddha, complete with the 32 signs, exists within the continuums of all sentient beings echoes the theistic theory of an eternally pure, unchanging self. If the 32 signs were already present in us, it would be contradictory to say that we still need to practice the path to create the causes for them. If someone says that they are already in us in an unmanifest form, and they just need to be made manifest, that resembles the Samkhya notion of arising from self, because even though existing, this Buddha would need to be produced again in order to be made manifest. So Samkhyas are non-Buddhist philosophers that were often argued with in ancient India. So Nagarjuna, who is one of our main scholars that we look to clarify emptiness, Nagarjuna said, and his followers soundly refuted production from self. The sutra continues with the Buddha's response. Mahamati, my teaching of the Tathagata Garbha is not similar to the propounding of a self by non-Buddhists. Mahamati, the Tathagatas, Arhats, the perfectly completed Buddhas, indicated in the Tathagata Garbha with the meanings of the word emptiness, limit of complete purity, nirvana, unborn, signless, wishless, and so forth. They do this so that the immature might completely relinquish a state of fear regarding to the selfless, and to teach the non-conceptual state, the sphere without appearance. So when you're abiding in a meditation on emptiness, only emptiness appears. So then continuing, here we see that the Buddha skillfully taught different ideas to different people, according to what was necessary at the moment and beneficial in the long term to further them on the path. We also learn that we must think deeply about the teachings, exploring them from various viewpoints, and bring knowledge gained from reasoning and from reading other scriptures to discern their definitive meaning. The purpose of learning about Buddha nature is to understand that the mind is not intrinsically flawed, and that, on the contrary, it can be perfected. It is not just that the mind can be transformed. There is already part of the mind that allows it to be purified and perfected. Understanding this gives us great confidence and energy to practice the methods to purify and perfect this mind of ours so that it will become the mind of a fully awakened Buddha. You know, really what's being discussed here is similar to what happens in a lot of conversations with new Buddhists, which is we're so used to drawing parallels between this and that and this and that. We're so used to trying to find patterns and relationships between things we're learning and things we already know, that when we hear about the Buddha's qualities, we equate it with our idea of God. And when we hear about ideas of karma, we equate it with our ideas of providence or fate or destiny. And that is not at all the conversation, but our mind wants to connect to things that are familiar. And so you hear omniscient, all-loving, all-compassionate, and you think, oh, God. And you think karma, cause and effect, consequences, you know, positive actions leading to happiness, negative actions leading to suffering. And your mind says, oh, punishment and reward, what God does. No, no, none of that. Break all of those associations. But it's natural that you would have those associations because of how we grew up. And even if you didn't grow up in that way, we grew up in cultures where many people believed those things. We read all sorts of literature that reflected those ideas. We see art that embodies those ideas. So it's only natural that it would get into our psyche and we would hear Buddha and think God, hear karma and think fate, destiny, providence. Break those associations, keep breaking them. No one is punishing you. No one is rewarding you. The mind does what it's been doing. The mind does what it was trained to do. The mind does what is habitual. And so then it experiences what is habitual. If it's putting out destructive energy, it invites destructive energy. If it's putting out constructive energy, it invites constructive energy. It's just energy, right? It's just cause and effect. If you plant a little seed and you give it the right conditions, it will grow. You don't think good seed, bad seed. You think seeds sprout when you water them. That's the nature of seeds, you know? So this is the kind of relationship we need to have with our idea about karma and about how the mind works. And that the mind, given the right habits, given the right conditions, given the right effort, can just exponentially grow into a tree with many fruits. It's just natural cause and effect. And the kind of fully fledged form of that is a perfected happiness and a perfected altruism, because why not? Right? Why not? So far, we see that progress is possible with the right conditions. What does it make more sense to say, oh, suddenly growth stops here? That's the end of human growth. That's the end of a mind's evolution. We haven't gotten to the end of our own mind's evolution. We might be stuck occasionally. We might have blockages or kind of dead years or something throughout our lives, but we're never done growing. So how can we say the end of growth is possible when we haven't even reached our own end in this human life? Yeah, and yet people land in this definitive, here is the limit of human evolution, here is the limit of a mind's development. And sure, there's these remarkable people like this one and that one, but they're magic, they're different, they're whatever, rather than just they are a product of their causes and conditions, just as we are a product of ours. So a lot of the conversations about the self and the mind and all this kind of stuff is in the following sections. So over the page is that basic clarity of mind meditation that we've done versions of many times. So if you're ever wanting to just walk yourself through it, it's on page 70. It's also online, it's also audio only. There's lots of variations of it, but this is the basic one that is our starting place. And then we're going to build on that with a Mahamudra style meditation. Then over the page is that questions and debate section between His Holiness and a scientist. And it's a good one to read over and over again, just really slowly, because it's often our own doubts. So it's a short section, but it's very much related to the sort of doubts that normal Western people have. And we've gone through it before, but I think it's useful to go through again. So kind of final Buddha nature thoughts or hang-ups or insights? And you know that you can say anything. This is your Sangha, this is your family, and if you say anything embarrassing, you can write me later and I can chop it out of the video so no one need ever know. So please always feel safe, okay?
I thought that quote also with assumptions about the nature of the human, that it's the basic is Buddha nature. This is something that I thought about.
Yeah, I was going to ask you guys about that. Does Kahut or any of the other kind of people of your school of thought, do they frame a finished product or what a finished product person would be? Is there and now you're done with analysis, or and now you're done with, you've won life, you've won, you're done. Here's your certificate, you have succeeded at life. Is there a criteria for that in psychoanalysis? Or is there a sense that it could be endlessly exponential growth that doesn't have a limit, or how is it framed for you guys? Health, integration, potential actualized. Yeah.
Maybe inner peace and happiness. No, Raanan?
The boss, would he like to weigh in?
Not as a boss.
As a collaborator in this collaborative effort of collaboration?
Well, we have our models for discussing finitude and infinity. And of course, from the beginning of the psychoanalytic movement, this issue was addressed by Freud, by his seminal paper about analysis terminable and interminable. Is a bedrock, some layers, foundational of the personality, which is the finite metrics of the human being. And sometimes it can be read. In Freud's legacy that he thought that there are some bedrock, like the penis envy and castration anxiety and so on. The woman envy in the man, man envy in women, and so on. But if you read it profoundly, you can see that Freud didn't think that there is a finite development to the human mind, and of course within the metrics of code, this kind of question, this kind of issue is addressed very directly in the polar model of the self. And in our words, when we are talking about emergence and dissolution of the self, we think of the immanent, finite character of the self as the emergent self. In the Buddhist perspective, it might parallel to the samsaric existence, to the samsaric level or dimension of existence. And on the other hand, the notion of infinity, the notion of transcendence, is embodied in the idealized option of the self, in the option of transformation, in the option of dissolving into cosmic narcissism. These are the bipolar model of our understanding of what is finite and what is infinite. And it doesn't contradict. You have to understand in what dimension, in what level of existence you're talking about. The same as when you always have to understand if you're speaking about the relative dimension of reality or the ultimate dimension of reality.
Do they ever give an example, like, here's an example of someone who's finished or who's almost finished or who's dissolved into cosmic narcissism? Or do they say, here's an example from history that we say, well done?
I hope not.
No? Just curious. Okay, so someone sent me an email and asked, what Buddha family do I belong to? What Buddha family do they belong to? And it was a really excellent question, but then I thought, well, this is a question to have with yourself, because, the dispositions from a sutra perspective and the dispositions from a tantric perspective, of course, that's a conversation you could have with your big T teacher, but really, ultimately, it's a conversation with yourself. So I thought we would do a poll. And I figured out how to do polls on Zoom, and I'm very excited about it, but I don't know if it will work. So you have to be patient because it's new technology. But anyway, it's anonymous, and I'm just going to put it up. And as you look at the questions, just click what feels the most you so far, and there are no right or wrong answers. So I'm just going to see how it goes. Okay, so the first question is, when trying to accomplish a task, how do you normally approach it when you're at your best? A, acting in an open way that supports others and supports everything happening. Acting with a feeling of being a substantial person, confident in your good qualities, and offers this same sense to others, nourishing everyone equally. C, acting with the fire of passion and commitment. D, acting with speed and force efficiently without any unnecessary movements. E, acts in precise and well-coordinated ways, reflecting the general situation and how everything fits. So are you able to click something in there?
Just one?
Yeah, just one. Only one, just the best answer, even though, different days, you're different people. Okay, next question. When trying to accomplish a task, how do you normally approach it when you're not at your best, right? On a bad day? Are you more likely to be A, vague and listless, B, lazy and don't want to take any responsibility. C, clingy and needy for validation and recognition. D, scattered and speedy. E, nitpicking, easily giving up on the task or insist on doing it all yourself. Nitpicking means like really critical. So just pick your best answer on a bad day.
Just one?
Yep, just one. For all of them, just one. Just the one that's the most common, the most you, even though, of course, all of us do all of these.
That's a personality test, Yönten.
It is like a personality test, yep. You can tell that I was force-fed Myers-Briggs until I gave up on it. Okay. Are you ready, number 3? When you speak with other people, so this is about speech, what are your normal tendencies on a good day? So is your speech usually soothing, calming, open, and accepting? Is it more stimulating with a rich vocabulary and regal and encouraging manner? C, are you more charming, spiced with gentle humor and personal anecdotes? D, strong, efficient, well-organized and powerful? E, precise, direct and flexible in various languages or styles to suit different situations. So on a good day, which is kind of your most common strength? Speaking. Ready for the next one? And don't worry, you know, I can send you the whole thing later for you to look at another time. This is just kind of your impulsive, immediate response. Don't overthink it. So 4, when you speak with other people, what are your normal tendencies on a bad day? So are you more likely to be boring and meandering, kind of sloppy? B, showing off, flooding others with unnecessary detail, or overly blunt and terse? C, overly emotional or seductive, like flirty? D, are you more likely to be kind of pushy and bossy, giving orders? Or E, critical, overly specific, and filled with unnecessary detail and technical terms? So your bad day speech. Ready? So 5 is, what is your most common trend that your thoughts have when you're in a good mood? Yeah, so just your mental mood on a good day. Are you more likely to just be spacious and clean without judgment, gently taking in all information present? B, sees people, situations, etc., all fitting equally into patterns or universality, balanced? C, observe, recognizes, and analyzes the characteristics of people, things, etc., so discerns. D, relates to people, objects, etc., and responds organically and wisely to them, interactive. Or E, highlights the general features within the whole of our experience and gives clear overview and sees how everything fits together, clarity. Right, so are you more spacious, balanced, discerning, interactive, or clear? Just your general happy mood. And then 6, what is the most common trend your thoughts have in a bad mood? A, apathetic and careless, like nothing matters. B, arrogant and stingy, and life becomes all about me. C, hyper-emotional and overly dramatic, exaggerates. D, fanatical, striving, competitive, comparisons of others, and one-upping even of ourselves out to prove something. Or E, grumpy and irritable, overly exact and fussy about the right way to be and things to do. So your bad mood thoughts. And then 7, when you're tired, stressed, hungry, lonely, anxious, feeling backed into a corner, what do you think is your default affliction, right? When you're depleted in some way, what's your like immediate afflictive behavior? Are you more likely to go into ignorance, which is shown by like listless, dull, dissociating, kind of vague? Are you more likely to go into pride, getting judgmental and haughty, puffed up? Attachment, usually demonstrated by desire, craving, hunger, dissatisfaction. Jealousy, usually thrown through belittling others or comparison and competitiveness. Or anger, usually demonstrated in harsh criticism of self, others, situations, and things. Also just being easily annoyed. And then this is the last question. So when you're calm, content, happy, connected to others, when you feel healthy and sane, what do you think is your default strength? So your most common strength. Are you open-minded and spacious and calm? Do you have equanimity, confidence, assertiveness, generous? Discrimination in the sense of clear recognition and discernment, committed, charming. D, accomplishment, gets the job done, efficient, enthusiastic. Or E, clarity, reflects reality like a clean mirror, reflecting images accurately, precise and sharp. Basically, it's boiling down to trends of Buddha families. And so if you want to look here, so they're all equal in ability and qualities, right? And in some contexts, we're going to lean more to one family than the other. But generally speaking, if you got mostly A's, you're of the Tathagata Buddha family. So you're open-minded, generally safe and positive direction in life, ethical discipline, calm behavior, acting in a spacious, flexible manner that provides room for everyone and everything, speaks in a soothing manner, transformed ignorance into all-encompassing Dharmadhatu wisdom. So that was a lot of you for a lot of the questions and would make you a good therapist. Weird. Okay. So quite a few of you were also Ratna family. Generosity and equal attitude towards all. Joyful, balanced, acting in a flowy, regal, self-confident manner, thus stimulating others, speaks in an invigorating manner with rich vocabulary, transformed pride. So this is the wisdom of equality. Very nice. You're all equal. Padma, Lotus family, was some of you a pretty good percentage. So understanding and discerning, acts in a way warm and gentle, inviting, respectful, winning individuals to our side, loving, compassionate, and sees individual characteristics, speaks in a charming, enchanting manner, well organized, but spiced with gentle humor, transformed attachment into discriminating wisdom. Okay, and so then very few people were either Karma family or Vajra family, whether that's because that they don't want to look at that side of themselves or it's actually just a very small trait. It's just interesting, sit with it in your own time. But if you got mostly Ds, you were of the Karma action family. Positive enthusiasm, perseverance, acts within the structure of vows, accomplishing activities efficiently, acts in a strong way, blowing away everything useless with speed and force without any unnecessary movements, speaks in a strong, forceful manner, transformed jealousy into the wisdom of accomplishment. So this was very few people's responses to very few of the questions. So that's not a strong trait for us as a group. And the Vajra diamond family, precision, discipline, seeing how everything fits without becoming angry when this is not immediately clear. Intelligent and direct, speaks in a flexible and precise manner in various possible languages and styles to suit different audiences. Transformed anger, mirror-like wisdom. So this was also a really small percentage for us as a group. So whether that means we haven't looked at our jealousy and haven't looked at our anger, or that means we are quite good at transforming our jealousy and quite good at transforming our anger, only you know. So I'll send it to you as a PDF in case you're curious, but it's just an exercise. And basically the descriptions of the 5 families are mainly from Dr. Alexander Berzin and Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. And I compiled it just for fun. So it's just an exercise in self-awareness is all it is. And, you know, different days we feel different ways. All right, so we'll just take a minute and dedicate. May all the energy we put into this class go towards the development of our fullest potential for the benefit of all sentient beings. Okay, thanks guys. So remember Wednesday to bring your Lama Yeshe book to class.